My daughter said, "You always overreact?" I looked at her across the hospital cafeteria table. The fluorescent lights made everyone look sick, which seemed appropriate. "You're right," I said. She blinked. She'd expected an argument. That's what she wanted. A drama she could screenshot and send to her brother. Proof that Dad was losing it. That Dad couldn't handle things anymore. "I'm glad you see that," she said, recovering quickly. She had her mother's ability to pivot, to turn any concession into a foothold for the next attack. "We're just worried about you. We think maybe you need some time to process everything." Process. That was the word they'd been using all week, as if grief were a software update that needed to install correctly. "I understand," I said. My son arrived then, his wife trailing behind him. They'd been in the parking garage, arguing about something. I could tell by the way they weren't looking at each other. Married 3 years and already communicating in pointed silence. "Dad," my son said, sliding into the booth, "we've been talking." The universal opener for bad news. We've been talking. Never I've been thinking. Always the collective, the mob mentality, the safety of numbers. "About what?" I asked. "About the arrangements," my daughter said. "About Mom's things. About the house." The house. My house. The house I'd bought 32 years ago. The house where I'd changed their diapers and fixed their broken toys and paid for the roof that kept the rain off their heads. "What about it?" I kept my voice level. "We think you should consider selling," my son said. "It's too much house for one person. The maintenance alone. I can handle the maintenance." "Dad." My daughter leaned forward, her voice dropping into that therapeutic tone she'd learned from too many self-help podcasts. "We're not saying you can't. We're saying you shouldn't have to. You've done enough. You've taken care of everyone for so long. Maybe it's time to let us take care of you." There it was, the poison wrapped in ribbon. My daughter-in-law finally spoke. "We found a really nice community in Mesa Verde. 55 and up. They have activities, social events. You wouldn't be so isolated." Isolated, as if I were a disease vector that needed containment. "I'll think about it," I said. "That's all we're asking," my son said, but his eyes said different. His eyes said this was already decided, that my thinking about it was just a formality, a courtesy they were extending because I hadn't yet realized I no longer had a vote. They left after that, citing commitments, appointments, responsibilities. The cafeteria felt larger without them, the tables spreading out like a map of everything I'd lost. I sat there for another 20 minutes, drinking bad coffee, watching nurses and orderlies move through their shifts. They didn't know me. They didn't know my wife had died in a room 4 floors up, that I'd held her hand while machines clicked and hummed, that the last thing she'd said to me was finish the kitchen backsplash. Not "I love you," not "take care of the kids." Finish the kitchen backsplash. Because she knew. She knew I'd finish it. She knew I finished everything, fixed everything, handled everything. That was my job. That was what I did. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. 47 unread messages. Condolences, mostly. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. People who'd heard the news through the extended family network and felt compelled to contribute their thoughts and prayers. I deleted them all. Then I opened my banking app and started reviewing accounts. My son was the primary on his checking account, but I was the secondary. Had been since he'd opened it at 19, before college, before his wedding, before he'd decided that being an assistant property manager was a career rather than a stepping stone. My daughter had a savings account I'd set up for her when she was 16. She'd never removed my access. Why would she? It was her emergency fund, her safety net. She'd used it twice in the past year, once for a root canal, once for her cat's surgery. I scrolled through my contacts. Insurance companies, the storage facility where I kept my wife's parents' furniture, the property management company that handled the commercial space my son leased for his side business that had never quite launched. All of them had my name, my phone number, my email. I was the emergency contact, the backup, the guarantor. I was infrastructure, and infrastructure was invisible until it failed. I finished my coffee and stood up. A nurse smiled at me on my way out, one of those automatic service smiles that meant nothing. I smiled back the same way. In the parking garage, I sat in my truck and updated some records. It took 40 minutes. When I was done, I drove home, to the house that was too big for one person, the house my children wanted to sell so they could split the equity and fund their own lives. The kitchen backsplash was 3/4 finished. I'd been planning to complete it last weekend, but then my wife had stopped breathing, and plans had changed. I measured and cut tiles until midnight. The work was precise, methodical. Each piece had to fit exactly, had to align with the pattern. There was no room for approximation. By the time I finished, my hands ached and my back screamed, but the backsplash was done. I cleaned the tools, showered, and went to bed. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A text from my daughter. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Mom. I stared at the message for a full minute, then turned the phone face down and closed my eyes. She didn't text again. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? The funeral was on Thursday. My son wore a suit I'd bought him for job interviews 4 years ago. It still fit, which meant he hadn't gained weight or lost any. He was exactly the same as he'd always been, adequate, presentable, unremarkable. My daughter cried during the service. Real tears, I think. It was hard to tell. She'd always been good at crying on cue, ever since middle school when she'd learned it could get her out of gym class or extend a deadline. My daughter-in-law sat beside my son, her hand on his knee, her face arranged in practiced sympathy. 84 likes. 17 comments. She'd met my wife exactly 9 times. People approached me after the service, shook my hand, told me things about my wife, stories I already knew, stories I'd lived, retold by people who'd seen her twice a year at cookouts and holidays. I nodded, said thank you, accepted casseroles and offers of help that would never materialize. My wife's sister pulled me aside near the parking lot. She was older than my wife by 3 years, harder by 3 decades. The kids seem worried about you, she said. They mentioned that. Are you doing okay? I'm fine. She studied my face, looking for cracks. If you need anything, I know where to find you. She let it go. She'd done her duty, checked the box, confirmed she'd reached out. Whatever happened next wasn't her responsibility. I drove home alone. My son and daughter had made plans to get dinner together, just the 2 of them, to process and decompress. They'd invited me, but in that way, that made it clear the invitation was obligatory. I'd declined. At home, I made a sandwich and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking at the finished backsplash. It looked good. Professional. My wife would have approved. My phone rang. My son. Hey, Dad, quick question. Did you do something with the storage unit? What do you mean? I tried to get in today to grab some of those old files for the business, but my code didn't work. Did you pay the bill? You always pay the bill. Past tense. I always paid the bill. He was right. I updated the account, I said. After your mother died. Consolidating things? Silence on his end. Then carefully. So how do I get in? You don't. It's my unit. My name on the lease. But my stuff is in there. Your stuff that I've been paying to store for 3 years. More silence. I could hear him breathing, recalculating. Can you get it for me? He asked. When do you need it? This week sometime, before the audit. The audit. His side business, the consulting firm that existed mostly on paper, had quarterly audits that always seemed to require immediate document retrieval. I'll see what I can do, I said, and hung up. I didn't go to the storage unit that week, or the next. My daughter called on Saturday. I let it go to voicemail. She called again on Sunday. Same result. She texted, Dad, we need to talk about the house, I replied, busy with estate stuff. Later. She tried calling again Monday morning while I was having coffee. I watched the phone buzz against the kitchen table, watched her name light up the screen, watched it go dark. She left a voicemail. I deleted it without listening. Tuesday afternoon, my son showed up at the house unannounced. I was in the garage, organizing tools. My wife had always complained that I spent too much time organizing tools, that they didn't need to be in perfect order, that life was too short to alphabetize socket wrenches. She'd been right, probably, but she wasn't here anymore. Dad, my son said from the doorway, you didn't answer your phone. I know. We've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. He stepped into the garage, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. Busy with what? Things. What things? I set down the wrench I'd been holding and turned to face him. What do you need? I need to know what's going on. The storage unit not answering calls, avoiding us. I'm not avoiding you. I'm standing right here. You know what I mean? I did know what he meant. I knew exactly what he meant. He meant I wasn't performing my role correctly, wasn't responding to the script they'd written where I gracefully accepted my obsolescence and thanked them for managing my decline. I'm handling some administrative things, I said. Your mother's accounts, insurance policies, transfers of ownership. It takes time. We could help with that. I've got it. Dad, I've got it. He studied me the way his sister had, looking for weakness, for signs of breakdown. He wouldn't find any. I'd had 40 years of practice keeping my face neutral, my voice steady, my emotions locked behind walls they'd never see. Fine, he said finally. But we still need to talk about the house. Not yet. When? When I'm ready. He left, frustrated. I could tell by the way he walked, the set of his shoulders, the force with which he closed his car door. I went back to organizing tools. Wednesday evening, my daughter-in-law posted photos from a charity event on social media. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something expensive, something that required jewelry and heels and professional hair. My son was beside her in the photos, smiling, his arm around her waist. The event was for childhood literacy. Tickets were $200 a plate. I wondered if he'd paid with the credit card I'd co-signed for 3 years ago, when his credit score was somewhere in the low 500s and he needed a vehicle loan. I opened my banking app and checked. He had. I made a note on my phone. A list, things to review, things to adjust. Thursday morning, I called the credit card company and removed myself as co-signer. It was surprisingly easy. A 10-minute phone call, a few security questions, a confirmation email. The representative asked if I wanted to notify the primary account holder. Not necessary, I said. Are you sure? It might affect his credit utilization. I'm sure. I hung up and made coffee. The sun was coming through the kitchen window, hitting the backsplash at an angle that made the tiles gleam. My wife would have liked that. She'd always paid attention to light, to how rooms felt at different times of day. I sat at the table and drank my coffee and thought about infrastructure, about the invisible systems that kept things running, about what happened when those systems shut down. My phone buzzed. My daughter. Dad, seriously, we need to talk. This isn't healthy. I finished my coffee before responding. I'm fine. Stop worrying. She called immediately. I declined the call. She texted again. You're not fine. You're withdrawing. This is textbook grief behavior. Textbook. She'd been reading articles, consulting resources, building her case. I didn't respond. Friday afternoon, I drove to the storage facility. I had a key made for Unit 247, the one where my son kept his business files. I opened the unit, surveyed the contents, and closed it again. Then I went to the office and updated my contact information. The manager was a woman in her 60s named Patricia. She'd worked there for 15 years, had seen 3 ownership changes, dozens of failed businesses, countless divorces manifested in the division of accumulated possessions. Anything else I can help you with? She asked. That's it, I said. You sure? You're the emergency contact for 3 other units. I know. She waited, expecting clarification. I didn't provide any. All right then, she said finally. You have a good weekend. You too. I drove home and cooked dinner. Steak, baked potato, salad. The same meal I'd made every Friday for 30 years. My wife had always complained that I was too predictable, that we should try new things, be spontaneous. I ate alone at the kitchen table and watched the sun set through the window. My phone stayed silent all evening. The locks were changed by 8 a.m. Saturday. The locksmith was a guy in his 40s who didn't ask questions, just did the work and took payment. I had 3 new keys made, 1 for me, 2 backups I locked in my safe. My daughter texted at 9 a.m. My key doesn't work. I didn't respond. She called at 9:15. I declined. She called again at 9:30, 9:45, 10:01. I declined them all. At 10:30, my son called. I answered. What's going on with the locks? He asked. I changed them. Why? Security. Security? You've lived in that house for 30 years. When have you ever worried about security? Things change. Did you change them to keep us out? I changed them because it's my house and I wanted new locks. Are you going to give us new keys? No. Silence. Long, heavy silence. You're serious, he said finally. Completely. Dad, this is insane. We're your family. And this is my house? What if there's an emergency? What kind of emergency? I don't know. What if you fall? What if you have a heart attack? How are we supposed to get in? You call 911. They have tools for that. This is ridiculous. This is boundaries. This is you losing your mind. If I'm losing my mind, why would you want access to my house? He didn't have an answer for that. Is this about the house conversation? He asked. Because we can table that. We can wait. We shouldn't have pushed. It's not about the house. Then what is it about? It's about the fact that you still don't understand what you did wrong. We were trying to help you. You were trying to help yourselves. How does selling the house help us? Split equity, reduced responsibility, 1 less thing to manage when I'm gone. That's exactly it. Don't lie to me, Kevin. I've known you since you were born. I know when you're lying. He hung up. I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. I ate slowly, methodically, watching birds in the backyard through the kitchen window. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from both kids, voicemails, ignored them all. At 2 p.m., my daughter-in-law posted on social media a vague message about family challenges and the importance of communication and seeking help when you need it. 17 comments. All supportive. All saying she was strong and brave. She didn't mention what the challenges were, didn't mention whose help was being sought. Just performance. Just theater. I took a screenshot. Added it to my collection. Sunday, I went to church. First time since my wife's funeral. The pastor looked surprised to see me, then pleased, then concerned when I sat alone in a back pew instead of my usual spot in the 4th row. After the service, he approached me. "Good to see you," he said. "How are you holding up?" "Fine." The grief process is different for everyone. If you need someone to talk to, I'm fine. Your kids mentioned they're worried about you. Of course they had. Of course they'd recruited the pastor, brought in reinforcements, built their case with concerned third parties. They worry too much, I said. They love you. They say that. He frowned, trying to parse my meaning. Is everything all right? Everything is clear. Clear? I understand things I didn't understand before. That's a kind of all right. He didn't push further, just gave me a card with his office number and told me to call any time. I thanked him and left. Monday morning, I received a call from Kevin's landlord, a man named Ed who owned the small commercial building where Kevin's office was located. Your son's rent is late, Ed said. I'm not my son's landlord. Why are you calling me? You're listed as emergency contact. Not anymore. The file I have says, the file is wrong. I'm not responsible for his rent. He said you'd cover it this month while he sorted out some banking issues. He lied. So you're not paying? I'm not paying. Ed sighed. Look, I've known Kevin for 3 years. He's a good kid. But if he can't pay rent, I need to start eviction procedures. That's between you and him? He said you'd understand. Said there was a family situation? There is. The family situation is that he's 34 and needs to handle his own obligations. That's cold. That's reality. Ed hung up. I sat at the kitchen table and added his name to my list. Another connection severed. Another thread cut. Tuesday, my daughter called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking it might be something important. Why aren't you answering your phone? She demanded. I answered. You know what I mean. Why are you ignoring us? I'm not ignoring you. I'm choosing not to engage. That's the same thing. It's not. Ignoring implies I don't hear you. I hear you. I just don't care. Dad, did you borrow someone's phone to call me because I don't recognize this number? I'm at work. I use the office phone. So you're using company resources for personal calls. Does your employer know? What? Just wondering if you're as ethical at work as you are at home. What is that supposed to mean? It means you should get back to work. Stop using company time to harass your father. I hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked the number. Wednesday afternoon, I received a letter from an attorney. Kevin had hired a lawyer to draft a formal request for me to reinstate my name on his business account and storage unit access. The letter cited family emergency and temporary misunderstanding and good faith negotiation. I read it twice, then used it as kindling for the fireplace. Thursday, I drove to the storage facility. Patricia was at the desk. Back again? She asked. Quick question. If someone wants access to a unit they don't own, what's the process? They'd need written authorization from the unit owner. And if the owner refuses, then they don't get in. We take ownership seriously. Too many disputes over property. Makes sense. Is someone trying to access your units? Possibly. We can add a note to the account. Flag it for extra verification. Please do that. She typed something into her computer. Done. Anyone tries to access your units, we'll call you directly for confirmation. Perfect. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Friday evening, both kids showed up at the house together. I watched through the front window as they stood on the porch, trying their keys, then knocking, then ringing the doorbell. I sat in the living room and waited. They knocked for 5 minutes. Called my phone, knocked again. Finally, they left. I waited another 10 minutes, then checked my phone. 16 missed calls, 23 texts. I deleted them all without reading them. Then I poured a glass of whiskey, my wife's favorite, the bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion that never came, and sat on the back deck, watching the sunset. The whiskey burned going down. It felt good. Saturday morning, my son's business officially closed. I knew because I drove past the building and saw the eviction notice taped to the door. Kevin was standing in the parking lot, loading boxes into his car. His wife was with him, her arms crossed, her face tight. I kept driving. At home, I made a list of everything I still paid for, everything I still managed, everything that connected me to them. The list was shorter than I expected. In 3 weeks, I'd remove myself from most of it. Bank accounts, insurance policies, emergency contacts, storage units, property management agreements. What remained were the connections they'd built themselves, the dependencies they'd created, and those were collapsing on their own. I spent the afternoon in the garage going through boxes of my wife's things, photos, letters, trinkets collected over 40 years of marriage. I found a letter she'd written me before we married, young handwriting, full of hope and certainty and plans for the future. I read it 3 times, then put it back in the box. Sunday, my daughter showed up with a man I didn't recognize, older, 50s, wearing a polo shirt and khakis. They stood on the porch and rang the doorbell. I opened the door but left the screen locked. "Dad, this is Dr. Brennan. He's a therapist who specializes in grief counseling." Dr. Brennan smiled professionally. "I've heard a lot about you. Your daughter is concerned about your well-being." "My well-being is fine." "She mentioned you've been exhibiting some concerning behaviors, social withdrawal, hostility toward family members, impulsive decisions." "I'm simplifying my life. That's not concerning." Sometimes, after a significant loss, people make decisions that seem logical in the moment, but are actually manifestations of unprocessed grief. And sometimes people make decisions because they're tired of being used. My daughter's face flushed. "Dad, please, just talk to him." "I don't need therapy." "You're destroying Kevin's life," she said. "His business is gone. His employees lost their jobs. His landlord is suing him. All because you removed yourself from some accounts. All because he built a business on a foundation that wasn't his. You were helping him. I was enabling him, and now I'm not. That's not destruction. That's withdrawal of support." Dr. Brennan held up a hand, trying to mediate. "I understand there's been some conflict. Family dynamics after a loss can be complicated, but making drastic changes during the grief process can have long-term consequences you might regret. I won't regret this." "You can't know that." "I can, because I've spent 3 weeks watching my children scramble to survive without me, and not once have they apologized. Not once have they acknowledged what they did. They've only demanded I fix what they broke." "What did we break?" my daughter asked. "Our relationship. The day you told me I overreacted. The day you decided I was a problem to be managed instead of a person to be respected. That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened." Dr. Brennan tried again. "Perhaps we could sit down together, work through some of these feelings in a structured environment." "No. Just one session. I don't need a session. I need my daughter to leave my property and take her hired professional with her." My daughter's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to help you." "You're trying to fix me so I'll go back to being useful." "That's not true." "Then why are you here? Why bring a therapist to my door? Why not just accept that I've made my decision and move on?" "Because we love you. You love what I did for you. That's not the same thing." She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. Honesty can be cruel. So can betrayal." Dr. Brennan cleared his throat. "I'm going to leave my card. If you change your mind, I won't." He placed the card on the porch railing and walked back to his car. My daughter didn't move. Kevin's marriage is falling apart. Jennifer blames him for the business failing. They're talking about separating. That's not my problem. He's your son. And he's a grown man who made decisions and needs to live with the consequences. What about your consequences? What happens when you're old and sick and alone because you drove everyone away? I'll handle it. How? The same way I've handled everything else, by myself. She left. I closed the door and went back to sorting through boxes. Monday, I received a call from my wife's sister. She'd heard about the situation from my daughter. "What's going on?" she asked. "Family issues." "I heard you're refusing to help Kevin." "I'm refusing to enable Kevin. There's a difference. He's struggling. He's learning." "Learning what?" "That actions have consequences. That you can't build a life on someone else's foundation and expect it to last." "You sound bitter." "I sound clear." "Your sister wouldn't want this." My wife wanted a lot of things. She wanted to retire in Florida. She wanted to see grandchildren. She wanted to grow old with me. She didn't get any of those things. So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about what she would have wanted regarding our adult children's financial independence. Silence. You've changed, she said finally. I've stopped. Stopped what? Stopped pretending, stopped performing, stopped being who everyone needed me to be. And who are you now? I'm still figuring that out. She hung up. I made dinner, spaghetti, garlic bread, salad. I ate at the kitchen table and watched the news. Nothing important happened. Tuesday, I drove to the cemetery. First time since the burial. My wife's grave had a temporary marker. The permanent stone would take 6 months to complete. I'd ordered it the week after she died. Simple, elegant, her name and dates, and a quote she'd loved from a poem I couldn't remember. I stood there for 20 minutes, waiting to feel something. Sadness, grief, regret. But all I felt was tired. I finished the backsplash, I said to the grave. It looks good. You would have liked it. The wind moved through the trees. A bird called from somewhere nearby. The kids think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. Maybe this is what crazy looks like. But I don't feel crazy. I feel like I finally woke up from something. No response. Of course not. I don't know if you'd approve of what I'm doing. Probably not. You always wanted me to be softer with them, more forgiving. But you're not here anymore. And they showed me exactly who they are when you left. So I'm showing them who I am. I walked back to my truck and drove home. Wednesday evening, Kevin showed up at the house alone. I watched him through the window, standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking defeated. I opened the door. Can I come in? He asked. No. Dad, please. 5 minutes. You can talk from there. He looked at the ground, gathering himself. My business is gone. My marriage is probably over. My credit is destroyed. And I know you think I deserve it, but I need you to understand something. What? I never meant to hurt you. We never meant to hurt you. You meant to manage me, to plan my future without my input. That hurt me. We were scared. Mom died, and you seemed lost, and we didn't know what to do. We thought we were helping. You thought you were inheriting. He flinched. That's not fair. It's true. You looked at me and saw an estate to settle, not a father to support. We looked at you and saw someone who might not be able to handle things alone. And that gave you permission to take over? To help? To be involved? To control? He was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from me? Nothing. Nothing? I want nothing from you. I want you to go build a life that doesn't depend on me. I want you to succeed or fail based on your own decisions. I want you to be an adult. I am an adult. Then act like one. How? Figure it out. That's what adults do. He stood there, waiting for more, waiting for some softening, some crack in my resolve. It didn't come. Okay, he said finally. Okay. He walked back to his car, got in, and drove away. I closed the door and locked it. Thursday, I received a letter from an attorney representing both of my children. It requested a formal family meeting to discuss estate planning and competency concerns. I called the attorney directly. This is Richard Moss. I'm calling about the letter you sent. Ah, yes, Mr. Moss. Thank you for reaching out. My clients are very concerned about... Tell your clients that I'm competent, I'm in full control of my faculties, and if they attempt to pursue any legal action regarding my competency, I will fight it with every resource I have. Mr. Moss, they're not trying to. Yes, they are. They want to establish grounds for conservatorship or guardianship. They want control of my assets. Tell them no. They're worried about your welfare. They're worried about their inheritance. There's a difference. Perhaps a meeting. No meetings, no negotiations. Tell them to drop this or I'll make sure there's nothing left to inherit. Mr. Moss. I hung up. Then I called my own attorney, a woman named Patricia Chen who'd handled my wife's estate. I need to update my will, I said. Of course. What changes are you considering? Everything. Friday morning, I met with Patricia Chen in her office downtown. She was in her early 40s, sharp and direct, the kind of attorney who didn't waste time on pleasantries. Tell me what you want to do, she said. I want to make sure my children can't touch anything if something happens to me. She raised an eyebrow. That's extreme. It's necessary. What happened? I explained the past month. The hospital conversation, the account removals, the business collapse, the letter from their attorney. Patricia listened without interrupting, taking notes. So you want to disinherit them, she said when I finished. I want to make their access conditional, complicated, something they have to earn. Define earn. I don't know yet, but I want safeguards. I want trustees. I want layers of bureaucracy they have to navigate. I want them to feel what it's like to be on the other side of control. She tapped her pen against her notepad. I can draft something, but you need to understand the implications. If you make this too complicated, you risk it being challenged in probate. Courts don't love vindictive estate planning. It's not vindictive, it's protective. Call it what you want. The court will interpret it however it wants. Can you make it work? I can make it difficult for them. Whether that's what you really want, you need to decide. It's what I want. She nodded. I'll draft something. Give me a week. I left her office feeling lighter, proactive, in control. On the way home, I stopped at a hardware store and bought supplies. Lumber, nails, wire mesh. A project I'd been putting off for years. Building a proper fence around the backyard. My wife had always wanted one. Said it would make the space feel more private, more intentional. I told her we didn't need it, that fences were expensive and unnecessary. But she wasn't here to tell me I told you so. I started digging post holes Saturday morning. The ground was hard, stubborn. I had to use a pickaxe to break through the clay layer. By noon, my hands were blistered and my back ached, but I had 6 holes dug. It felt good, physical, real. My daughter's car pulled into the driveway around 2 p.m. She got out slowly, watching me work. Building a fence? She asked. Yes. Why? Because I want one. She walked closer, stopped at the edge of the yard. Can we talk? We are talking. Can we talk without you being hostile? I'm not being hostile. I'm digging holes. Dad, please. I'm trying here. I set down the post hole digger and wiped my forehead. What do you want? I want to understand what's happening. Kevin's life is falling apart. You're building fences. Nothing makes sense anymore. It makes perfect sense. You just don't like the outcome. We made a mistake. We pushed too hard about the house. We should have given you space. I know that now. You should have known it then. We were scared. Mom died and everything changed, and we didn't know how to help. So you decided to help by planning my future without me. We were worried you'd make bad decisions while grieving. Like what? Like changing locks? Like removing my name from accounts I never should have been on? Like building a fence? Like pushing away everyone who cares about you. Everyone who needs me, I corrected. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, watching me. What happened to you? I woke up. To what? To the fact that usefulness isn't the same as value. To the fact that being needed isn't the same as being loved. We love you. You love what I provided. The support, the backstop, the emergency contact. But when I stopped providing it, your love disappeared pretty quickly. That's not true. Prove it. How? Go away. Live your life. Succeed or fail on your own. Stop asking me for anything, then come back in a year and tell me you love me. If you still do, maybe I'll believe you. A year? Or 10? Or never? I don't care anymore. You don't mean that. I mean every word. She turned and walked back to her car, stopped before getting in. Jennifer left Kevin. I heard. Did you know she was pregnant? I hadn't known that. Felt a flicker of something, surprise, maybe concern. It passed quickly. No, I said. She found out last week. Told Kevin yesterday, then said she couldn't raise a baby with someone who couldn't even keep a job. That's her decision. It's your grandchild. It's a fetus, and it's none of my business. How can you be so cold? Practice. She got in her car and left. I went back to digging holes. By Sunday evening, I had all 12 posts set and concrete poured. I'd need to wait 24 hours before attaching the rails and mesh. I sat on the back deck with a beer and surveyed my work. It wasn't professional quality, but it was solid. It would last. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Moss? This is Detective Carver with the police department. I'm calling about a wellness check request we received. A what? Your daughter filed a report. She's concerned about your mental state. Said you've been behaving erratically, making threats. I haven't threatened anyone. She mentioned you told your son you'd make sure there was nothing left to inherit. That's not a threat. That's a statement of intent regarding my own property. She also said you've isolated yourself, changed locks, refused to see family members. All legal activities. I understand, but we're required to follow up on these reports. Are you all right? I'm fine. Any thoughts of harming yourself or others? None. Any mental health concerns you'd like to discuss? No? Would you be willing to have an officer stop by just to verify you're safe? No. I'm a competent adult managing my own affairs. My daughter is attempting to establish a paper trail for a competency challenge. I won't participate in that. Silence. Then, Understood. I'll note that you're uncooperative, but appear mentally sound. Note whatever you want. He hung up. I called Patricia Chen, left a voicemail about the wellness check and the implications for their legal strategy. Then I finished my beer and went inside. Monday, I received an email from my daughter with the subject line, "Please read this." I deleted it without opening it. Tuesday, the fence rails went up. By Wednesday, the mesh was attached. By Thursday, the gate was installed and functional. I stood in the backyard, looking at the completed fence. 8 feet tall, chain link with privacy slats. A keyed gate that locked from both sides. My wife would have liked it. Or maybe she would have thought it was too much, too isolating, too defensive. I'd never know. Friday afternoon, a process server appeared at my door. He handed me an envelope and left. Inside was a petition for emergency guardianship, filed by my daughter and son jointly, claiming I was unable to manage my own affairs due to diminished mental capacity brought on by grief and age. They cited the wellness check, the changed locks, the account closures, the fence. They'd assembled evidence, built a case, recruited professionals. They were trying to take control. I called Patricia Chen. "I got served," I said. "I'll file a response. We'll fight this." "How long will it take?" "Weeks, maybe months. Depends on the judge and the evidence they present." "What happens in the meantime?" "Nothing. You're still in control of your affairs. This is just a petition, not an order." "Good. Richard, I need to ask. Are you sure you want to fight this? Sometimes families heal better when there's mediation, when everyone steps back." "I'm not stepping back. I'm not mediating. I'm fighting." "Okay, then we fight." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, reading through the petition. They'd twisted everything, made my reasonable decisions sound like paranoia, made my independence sound like incapacity. They'd weaponized my grief. I read it 3 times, memorizing their arguments, their evidence, their strategy. Then I started planning my response. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Patricia filed a response challenging every claim, demanding evidence, requesting medical evaluations. "They'll need to prove incompetence," she explained. "That's a high bar. Eccentricity isn't enough. Even bad decisions aren't enough. They need to show you can't manage basic life functions." "I can manage fine." "Then we'll demonstrate that. We'll bring in witnesses, show financial records, prove you're thinking clearly." "What kind of witnesses?" "Neighbors, colleagues, people who can testify to your mental state." I thought about that. Who would testify for me? I'd spent 40 years being infrastructure, being invisible. I didn't have friends, not really. I had acquaintances, people I'd worked with, people who knew my name, but no one who knew me. "I'll figure it out," I said. "Figure it out fast. We have 3 weeks." I spent the next week documenting everything. I created spreadsheets showing my financial activity, my account management, my decision-making process. I photographed the fence, the finished backsplash, the organized garage. I compiled emails and texts from my children showing their demands, their assumptions, their treatment of me as an asset rather than a person. I built my case methodically, precisely, the way I'd built everything else in my life. But at night, alone in the house, I wondered if it was enough. 2 weeks before the hearing, Kevin showed up at the house again. This time he didn't knock. He just sat in his car in the driveway for 20 minutes. I watched from the window, waiting. Finally he got out, walked to the porch, stood there. "I know you're watching," he called. "I know you're in there." I opened the door. "What do you want?" "I want to drop the guardianship petition." "Then drop it." "It's not just my decision. Your sister filed it jointly." "Your sister, my daughter. Tell her to drop it." "She won't. She's convinced you need help." "I need to be left alone." "She thinks you're dangerous. To yourself." "Based on what?" "Based on everything. The fence, the locks, the accounts, the way you cut us off. All legal, all rational." "Maybe, but it doesn't look that way. It looks like you're spiraling." "I'm not spiraling. I'm shedding." "Shedding what?" "You're what you've always been. Dependent, entitled, convinced that my resources are your resources." "We never thought that." "You acted like it. You built lives that depended on me being there, being available, being willing to prop you up whenever you failed." "That's what parents do." "No, parents raise children to be independent. I raised you to be parasites." "That's not fair." "It's accurate, and now you're mad because the host is removing the parasite." He stared at me, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. "I wanted to give you a chance to stop this, to back down before the hearing." "I'm not backing down." "Then you'll lose." We have evidence. We have doctors. We have a paper trail showing erratic behavior. You have a narrative. I have facts. The court will side with us. We're the concerned family. You're the isolated, grieving widower making irrational decisions. We'll see. Dad, please, just drop this. Just agree to some oversight. A financial advisor, a check-in system, something that lets us help without taking control. No. Why not? Because it's not about help. It's about control. And I'm done being controlled by people who don't respect me. We respect you. You patronize me. You condescend to me. You treat me like a problem to be managed. That's not respect. He was quiet for a long time. Then, Mom would hate this. She'd hate what you've become. She'd hate what you've done. He turned and walked back to his car. Before getting in, he said, I'll see you in court. Looking forward to it. He drove away. I closed the door and locked it. 1 week before the hearing, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Moss, this is Dr. Ellen Trask. I've been retained by your children to perform a psychological evaluation as part of the guardianship proceedings. I'm not submitting to an evaluation. It's court-ordered. Show me the order. It will be filed tomorrow. Then call me tomorrow. I hung up. Patricia called 10 minutes later. They got a court order for a psych eval. Can they do that? In guardianship cases, yes. The court wants to ensure competency before making a decision. What happens if I refuse? The judge can rule against you based on non-compliance. So I have to submit to this? Yes. But we can be present. We can record it. We can challenge any findings. When? Day after tomorrow. Her office, downtown. I'll be there. The evaluation took 3 hours. Dr. Trask was in her 50s, professional and distant. She asked questions about my childhood, my marriage, my work history, my relationship with my children. She asked about the decisions I'd made in the past 2 months. I answered honestly, directly, without emotion. She showed me ink blots, had me complete memory tests, asked me to solve logic puzzles. I passed everything. At the end, she asked, Why do you think your children are concerned about you? Because I stopped doing what they wanted. That's a simplification. It's the truth. They believe you're suffering from complicated grief, that your decisions are driven by unprocessed loss. My decisions are driven by clarity. I see things now I didn't see before. What things? That my value to them was conditional, that their love was transactional, that they saw me as infrastructure, not as a person. That's a harsh interpretation. It's an accurate one. She wrote something in her notes. Do you feel angry at your children? Yes. Do you want to punish them? I want them to understand consequences. Is there a difference? Yes. Punishment is about inflicting pain. Consequences are about removing protection. And you've removed your protection. Completely. Do you feel any remorse about the impact of your decisions? No. None at all? None. She studied me for a long moment. That concerns me. Why? Because healthy grief involves ambivalence, doubt, regret. You're expressing none of those things. I'm expressing clarity. Or avoidance. Call it what you want. I'm done with this evaluation. Patricia walked me out. How do you think it went? She thinks I'm cold. Are you? Probably. Is that a problem? Only if the court thinks cold equals incompetent. 3 days before the hearing, I received Dr. Trask's report. Patricia sent it over with a note. This isn't great. The report concluded that while I showed no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment, I displayed significant emotional detachment consistent with complicated grief disorder, and patterns of decision-making that prioritize punitive outcomes over relational repair. She recommended supervised financial management and mandatory therapy. Not full guardianship, but oversight. Can we fight this? I asked Patricia. We can argue it's overreach. That emotional state doesn't equal incompetence, but it gives them ammunition. What do I need to do? Show up, testify, convince the judge you're in control. I am in control. Then make sure he sees that. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the next day, about seeing my children in court, about a judge deciding whether I was competent to manage my own life, about the possibility of losing. At 3 a.m., I got up and went to the garage. I found the box of my wife's letters and pulled out the one she'd written before we married. I read it again, her young handwriting talking about futures and promises and forever. She'd believed in forever. We'd gotten 40 years. Not forever, but close enough. I put the letter back and went to bed. Tomorrow, I'd fight for the right to control what was left of my life. Tomorrow, I'd face my children as enemies instead of family. Tomorrow, everything would change. Again. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a judge's bench, a few tables, rows of seats that were mostly empty. My children sat on one side with their attorney, a woman in her 30s who looked expensive. I sat on the other side with Patricia. The judge was a man in his 60s, gray hair, reading glasses, the kind of face that had seen everything and was tired of all of it. He reviewed the petition, the response, Dr. Trask's report. Then he looked up. This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether there's sufficient cause to proceed with guardianship proceedings. I'll hear testimony from both sides, review evidence, and make a determination. Let's keep this civil. The opposing attorney stood. Your Honor, we're here because our clients are deeply concerned about their father's well-being. She laid out their case. The changed locks, the account closures, the business collapse, the fence, the isolation. She called my daughter to testify. My daughter took the stand, looking nervous. She described the past 2 months from her perspective, made it sound like I'd had a breakdown, made every decision sound irrational. He won't talk to us, she said. He won't let us in his house. He's cut off all contact except when he wants to tell us how we failed him. Do you believe your father is capable of managing his own affairs? The attorney asked. I think he's drowning in grief and making decisions that hurt himself and everyone around him. I think he needs help. Thank you. Patricia stood for cross-examination. Ms. Moss, when was the last time you contributed financially to your father's household? My daughter blinked. I don't understand the question. Have you ever paid for his groceries, his utilities, his mortgage? No, but... Has he ever asked you to? No. So he's been financially independent his entire adult life? Yes. And in the past 2 months, has he missed any bill payments? Not that I know of. Has he lost his house, his car, his ability to feed himself? No. Then what evidence do you have that he can't manage his own affairs? He's not acting like himself. Acting differently isn't the same as being incompetent, is it? I suppose not. Thank you. My daughter stepped down. My son took the stand next. His testimony was similar, concerned, worried, convinced I needed intervention. Patricia asked him the same questions, got the same answers. He couldn't point to any actual failure on my part, just decisions he disagreed with. Then they called Dr. Trask. She testified about the evaluation, her findings, her concerns about my emotional state. Mr. Moss shows no cognitive impairment, she said, but his emotional detachment and punitive decision-making suggest he's not processing his grief in a healthy way. Does that make him incompetent? The judge asked. Not legally, but it suggests he may benefit from oversight to prevent decisions he'll later regret. Regret isn't a legal standard, Patricia said. No, Dr. Trask agreed, but concern for one's well-being is. When they finished, Patricia called me to testify. I took the stand and swore to tell the truth. Patricia asked basic questions first. My age, my profession, my financial situation. I answered clearly, directly. Then she asked, Why did you remove yourself from your son's business account? Because I didn't want to be liable for a business I didn't own or control. That seems reasonable. It is reasonable. Why did you change your locks? Because I wanted to control access to my own home. Also reasonable. Yes. Your children claim you've isolated yourself. Is that true? I've reduced contact with people who treated me poorly. That's not isolation, that's boundaries. Can you explain what you mean by treated you poorly? I looked at my children. They wouldn't meet my eyes. 3 weeks after my wife died, my children approached me about selling my house. They presented it as concern, but it was asset management. They wanted to liquidate my property while I was grieving because they thought I'd be too weak to resist. Is that an interpretation or a fact? It's what they said. What they did. They even brought a therapist to my door to try to manipulate me into compliance. The judge looked interested. They brought a therapist to your home? Yes, Your Honor. To convince me I needed help. It was an intervention staged without my consent. Continue, the judge said. After I refused to help my son prop up his failing business, they filed for guardianship. This isn't about my well-being. It's about control. They want access to my assets, my decisions, my life. And when I said no, they tried to use the legal system to take it anyway. Patricia nodded. Are you competent to manage your own affairs? Yes. Do you understand the decisions you've made? Completely. Do you regret them? Not even slightly. She sat down. The opposing attorney stood for cross-examination. Mr. Moss, do you love your children? I used to. Used to? Love requires respect. They don't respect me, so no, I don't love them anymore. She looked surprised. That's a harsh statement. It's an honest one. Don't you think that's evidence of impaired judgment, to stop loving your own children? I think it's evidence of clarity. I see them for what they are. Entitled, manipulative, willing to use the court system to control their father because he won't submit voluntarily. You sound angry. I am angry. Doesn't that anger concern you? No, it's appropriate. They betrayed me. Anger is the correct response. She tried a different approach. You built a fence around your property. Why? Because I wanted one. An 8-foot fence with a locked gate seems excessive for privacy. It's my property. I can build whatever I want. It's also symbolic, isn't it? You're walling yourself off from the world. I'm walling myself off from people who hurt me. That's different. Do you have any friends, Mr. Moss? Anyone you talk to regularly? No. Any social activities? No. Any support system? I don't need one. Everyone needs support. I need to be left alone. She sat down, looking satisfied, like she'd proven something. The judge reviewed his notes. I'm going to take a short recess to consider the evidence. He left. We waited. 20 minutes later, he returned. I've reviewed the testimony and evidence, he said. While Mr. Moss's decisions may seem unconventional, there's no evidence of cognitive impairment or inability to manage basic life functions. His choices, while emotionally driven, are legally permissible. I'm denying the petition for guardianship. My children's attorney stood. Your Honor, we'd like to request supervised financial management. Denied. Mr. Moss is competent. His financial decisions are his own. This court will not impose oversight based on family disagreement. He banged his gavel. It was over. Patricia smiled. You won. I stood up, looked at my children. My daughter was crying. My son looked hollow. They'd lost, and I'd made sure they knew it. We left through different exits. I didn't say goodbye. Outside, Patricia stopped me. What happens now? Now I go home. And your kids? They're not my problem anymore. Richard, be careful. This kind of family rupture. I don't need careful. I need done. I drove home alone, parked in my driveway, walked through my locked gate into my fenced yard. Inside the house, I poured a drink and stood in the kitchen, looking at the backsplash. My wife would have been disappointed in me, but my wife was gone, and I was still here, free. The next 2 weeks were quiet. No calls, no texts, no visits. My children had finally understood. I worked on the house, fixed the front steps, repainted the garage, replaced the gutters. Physical work, methodical, satisfying. I didn't think about them, or I tried not to. But sometimes at night, I'd hear something, a car door, footsteps on gravel, and I'd check the windows, expecting to see them. They never came. Then, 3 weeks after the hearing, Kevin's car appeared in my driveway. I watched from the window. He sat there for 5 minutes before getting out. He walked to the door, knocked. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Dad, I know you're in there. I can see your truck. I stayed still. I just want to talk. 5 minutes. I waited. Please. I opened the door but left the screen locked. He looked terrible, thinner, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. What do you want? I asked. Jennifer lost the baby. I felt something shift in my chest. Not grief, exactly. More like recognition of a loss that should matter but didn't. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it, sort of. She left after that, moved back to her parents' place, filed for divorce. I heard. From who? Your sister. You're talking to her? She texted. I didn't respond. He nodded slowly, taking that in. Everything's gone. The business, the marriage, the apartment. I'm living in a motel off the highway. I'm sorry about the baby, I said again. Are you sorry about the rest? No. He almost laughed. At least you're honest. What do you want, Kevin? I don't know. I drove here without thinking. He stopped, gathering himself. I wanted to see if you'd changed your mind. About what? About us. About helping. About being my dad. I'm not your dad anymore. I'm the man who raised you. There's a difference. What difference? A dad keeps helping even when his kids are adults. Even when they're failing. Even when they're cruel. I'm not that anymore. What are you? Someone who stopped. He looked at me for a long time. I don't know how to do this without you. You'll figure it out. What if I don't? Then you don't. That's it? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? That I'll help? I won't. That I forgive you? I don't. That I believe you'll succeed? I'm not convinced. Jesus, Dad. You came to my house. You asked the question. I'm giving you the truth. He turned to leave, stopped. Your sister wants to see you. Tell her no. She's sick. Something in his voice made me look closer. What kind of sick? The kind that doesn't get better. I didn't respond. She found out last month. Didn't tell anyone until last week. She wants to apologize. For what? For the guardianship thing. For pushing. For everything. Too late. You're serious? You won't even see her? I saw her in court. That was enough. She's your daughter. She tried to take control of my life. She tried to use a judge to force me into compliance. She's not my daughter. She's someone I used to know. Kevin stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. I don't know you anymore, he said. Good. He walked back to his car. Before getting in, he called back, She has maybe 3 months, if you change your mind. I won't. He drove away. I closed the door. Felt nothing. Or maybe felt something so buried I couldn't identify it. I made dinner, ate mechanically, cleaned up. At 9 p.m., my phone rang, my daughter. I stared at it, watching her name light up the screen. Let it ring through to voicemail. She called again at 10 p.m., again at 11 p.m. At midnight, she texted, Dad, please, I'm scared. I turned off my phone. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery, stood at my wife's grave for an hour. Kevin told me yesterday. Some kind of cancer. 3 months, maybe. The wind moved through the trees. You'd tell me to forgive her, to go see her, to make peace before it's too late. No response. But I can't. She tried to take everything from me. She weaponized the legal system. She treated me like an obstacle. Silence. So I'm going to let her die the way she let me die, alone, dismissed, erased. I waited, half expecting some sign, some message from the universe telling me I was wrong. Nothing came. I drove home. That night Kevin called. She's in the hospital. Hospice. She wants to see you. No. Dad, please, she's your daughter. She stopped being my daughter when she filed those papers. People make mistakes. And people live with consequences. I heard you the first time. And you don't care? I care that she's in pain. I don't care enough to absolve her. You're a monster. Probably. He hung up. I sat in the quiet house and thought about monsters. About what turns a person into something cruel. About whether I'd become what they'd made me, or what I'd always been. The next week, my daughter died. Kevin called to tell me. His voice was flat, exhausted. She asked for you until the end, he said. Kept saying she was sorry. Okay. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I want you to feel something. I feel plenty. Just not what you want me to feel. What do you feel? Relief. He hung up. The funeral was on a Thursday. I didn't go. I stayed home, worked on the house, trimmed the hedges. Kevin called after, left a voicemail about how I'd destroyed the family, how I'd become exactly what I'd accused them of being. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. That night, I sat on the back deck with a drink and watched the sunset through the fence slats. Everything was quiet. Everything was finished. 2 days later, Kevin showed up again. This time he didn't knock. He just stood in the driveway, staring at the house. I watched from the window. After 10 minutes, he got back in his car and drove away. I never saw him again. Patricia called a week later about my updated will. It's done, she said. Everything goes to charity. Your kids get nothing. Perfect. Are you sure about this? Completely. Okay, I'll file it. She hung up. I sat in my house, surrounded by things I'd built and fixed and maintained. Everything was mine. Everything was controlled. Everything was exactly how I wanted it. I'd won, they'd lost, and somewhere in the distance, in a motel room or an empty apartment or a house they couldn't afford, my children were learning what it meant to live without a safety net. Learning what it meant to fall, learning what I'd tried to teach them. I finished my drink, locked the doors, turned off the lights, and slept better than I had in months.